Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
I'm American, so I'm loud by nature, and it travels. Sorry about that. Thank you, everyone, for staying for this, to learn about infusing innovation with legacy brands. We have a couple of legacy brands that we're going to specifically focus on because we have some of their amazing talent on this stage. And I think what's wonderful about this panel, all four women have a lot of experience from, well, maybe some Web 1, definitely Web 2, working enterprise, working at big corporate brands. And so you've got a really nice kind of mix here. And with taking all that experience into in the innovative space of Web3 now, I think we'll have some really, really great insights. Right, so you have Nadia to my left, whose surname I've just forgotten because we only just met. There we go.
I'm from London, and I have the name that matches.
So Nadia is currently VP at Hugo Boss and running many of the Web3 activations and projects. To her left is Mary Fellows. So Mary brings an illustrious career from the high fashion world. Contributor to, I think, 13 different editions of Vogue. She's now very active in her own sustainability consultancy and practice. And she'll be able to talk through how she's leaning into innovation and helping legacy brands lean into innovation as part of a sustainable practice. Then you have Kadine James, and Kadine is currently at Artificial Rome, which is a spatial web company, creative agency, and she's going to talk a lot about a project that is live right now with Diesel. And Kadine previously was at Accenture, Yahoo, I think Verizon, so we'll bring lots of experience from her roles there. And then last but not least, Jen Roebuck, who is currently at Metaversal, which is a Web3 IP fund, doing lots of exciting projects. Previous to that, Jen was also working part of the Diesel Fossil group, so her and Kadine will be able to ping pong on that live project right now. And then Jen has also had experience as CMO of Feel Unique, French Connection, Ted Baker, and others. Hi. What I'd like to start with, poor Nadia, who only just,
Poor
you know,
me.
we're going to go straight into KPIs. No, we're not going to make it that boring yet. So Nadia, I was just saying to you when we met, Hugo Boss has been one of those I've been geeking out from afar because I've thought it is so brave, the moves as a brand that wasn't an obvious legacy brand to lean into Web3. You guys didn't just lean in, it felt like 2 feet in. You just jumped. And speaking of like jumping sports, you come from JD Sports.
Yes.
And I wonder if some of that, we all know the Nike artifact is like a really strong use case. Is part of that street culture, sneaker culture, collecting, trading, utility, access, like is that part of what gave you the motivation to bring some of that into Hugo Boss? And can you just tell us, as a 100-year-old brand, how that culture of innovation, how have you fused that internally to get where you are now, what you've just done at Fashion Week? A lot.
Well, that's a complex and deep question, guys. I'm happy we're with a friendly audience. So yeah, I was at JD Sports previously, and of course that's everything to do with culture, collectibles. I think it gives you such a great learning because you're working with some of the best and most desired brands in the world and towards a really, really discerning audience, right? The younger, because I'm quite ancient, the younger generations are ruthless and so savvy and sharp, right? Everything that we've had to do at JD was about being at the front of technology, making sure that everything that we're offering is relevant, right, desirable, and finding ways to be as close to those consumers as possible. The JD audience, before we get into everything about Hugo Boss, is incredibly savvy and sharp. Yeah. So one of the things in leading that business where I was before as CMO, was about really respecting that audience and understanding how to connect with them in a way that they find valuable, authentic and credible. Woe betide anyone that thinks a youth audience is just out to spend 110 quid on a pair of sneakers and not want additional value or not want to know more about the brand and the product and the offer and how you can enhance their lifestyles, right?
Right.
That said, there was lots of learnings, lots of stuff working with some of those top brands such as Nike, Adi, etc., that could come and has helped me to settle in to Hugo Boss. That said, all credit is not due to me. We have an amazing chief executive who's put forward our Claim 5 strategy. So when he took the helm about 2.5 years ago at Hugo Boss, he put forward this strategy, Claim 5, which was indeed about re-energizing this dormant giant. We're a 100-year-old brand, so legacy is exactly what we are about. And he has vision, passion, and a voracious appetite for discovering what's new and putting it out there for the consumers in the most relevant and authentic way. So actually, the vision was set as part of our Claim 5 strategy to re-energize the house of Hugo Boss. As part of that, we actually launched a 2-brand strategy so that we have Brand Boss that is targeting a specific audience group and Brand Hugo. That meant we have a kind of Hugo Boss platform and then room to be able to express and experiment and talk and engage with different audiences through 2 very distinct and different brands, which allows us to also experiment with different approaches. Within that then, it's about recruiting people into our brand, it's about retaining people into our brands, and importantly, I think, understanding their lives. So if we take Brand Boss, it's crucial for us to find ways to engage with the existing audience base we have. We're a legacy brand, we have big retail stores, footprint, people like the physical product. We sell, our core business today is physical product, but in the future, that can be very, very different. So for us, it's important that we're always looking ahead and finding the best ways to add value to our consumers. We've activated a marketing strategy that's also heavily driven by social and digital and the creator community as well. So for us, leaning into Web3, it is about finding ways to engage, add value and build sustainable relationships with our communities, whether that's the creators or our consumers.
So all of this is a little bit, could be intimidating and scary for a legacy brand. I'd like to double click on our creators also being a part of that. Right? What does that look like?
So for us, I like that I'm the only one talking.
Oh, they'll have their time.
So for us, you know, as part of our reinvigoration of Brand Boss, I'm just leaning into one of our brands for now. We need, 100-year-old, everyone knows Hugo Boss, I think. I hope in this room as well, if anyone ever needs formal gear and suiting and smart stuff, that's the place to go. It's the destination of choice. But we had this audience built in, but we know it's really important to bring new people into our ecosystem, right? Really, really important. How do we do that in a relevant and credible way? How can we tell the right stories? Importantly, not just putting content out about our brands and what we're doing and the exciting events, but leveraging those to show that these are relevant to our consumers' lifestyle. Working with creators, whether that is, social creators or personalities or innovators that can help us to deliver certain messages. Athletes, we work with a lot. Artists, actors, influencers from certain lifestyle groups, we work with all of these people, or the consumers that we can activate as advocates as well and creators in their own right. We need to find ways to deliver equitable and more balanced partnerships so that we can have sustainable relationships with them and so that we can really be authentic and true of voice in what we do. So for us, it's about now co-creating a lot of what we do and testing a lot of things with this creator community and taking a lot of their ideas in and really working hand in hand. So for us, that's how we're now starting to work and how we have been working when we talk about that community. So they're part of the Hugo Boss family, so to say.
Yeah, which is Web3 is nothing if not passionate about community and a way to unlock community. And in this new world, I remember 10 years ago, it was scary to think about an influencer or a blogger taking your product, right, And now we're just evolving that on, right?
Yeah, and I think for us, whether that's product or our comms or any of the innovations we do, working with the people who are deeply engaged and passionate about these different topics and areas, it only enriches what we do, and it only helps us to really challenge ourselves before we're putting things out there for the consumers at large. So for us, working with that network of creators is invaluable.
I'd like to pick up on something you said and kind of throw it over to Mary. You said that at Hugo Boss, it's retail stores selling physical product, but looking forward to where there might be a digital product. So, Mary, when you work with bringing your fashion experience, when you're working with brands on sustainability as a practice and what that looks like, what's the conversation with legacy brands now about phygital or digital lines?
It's a complicated one. And I have kind of various positions on it, and some of those conflict, but I'll outline it. So first of all, the sustainability conversation gets very complicated because a lot of brands don't know how to tackle it. And during the pandemic, a lot of legacy brands, instead of carrying on investing in sustainability to get towards net zero, they then diverted a lot of that funding into Web3 and metaverse. And so a lot of us in the sustainability community got very upset. We're like, really? Do you really think the world needs more skins? And is this responsible? But you can't stop that, right? So knowing that in future, consumers aren't just going to be consumers of brands, they're going to be fans. Like hear them referred to now as fans a lot. And big brands, legacy brands are behaving kind of like big entertainment industry figures, like they have their fans and their consumers, and those things cross over. And so what I say to brands is like, if you're going to innovate into Web3 and either do skins or do metaverse activations, go for it. Because it's going to be another way to get consumers to engage with your brand as a fan or a user or a consumer or in your ecosystem, in your community, in a way that their digital footprint will be significantly less than the footprint as if they were just consuming product. That applies more actually to fast fashion or the lower end volume players, because the footprint of those items is terrible, whereas legacy brands like Hugo Boss or Gucci or Prada, those things don't tend to make it quickly to landfill and incineration or charity shops, right? So there is that. But I'm not against the idea of all of that innovation into Web3 as long as it's done mindfully, because the amount of activity and data mining and energy intensity that comes from that is quite significant. Like the power consumption is insane, the footprint is significant. So I think a company has to acknowledge that elephant in the room. If they're going to encourage all of that digital activity, they've got to acknowledge the amount of power that's going to use, and that won't be power they're paying for. Somebody else is paying that cost, right? So there is that. It's a small thing, but it should be considered. And then the other thing I always say to legacy brands is like, don't just innovate for innovation's sake. Don't just go and do a whole set of skins or create digital fashion because you feel like you need to be relevant. If you're doing it, there's got to be intent and purpose, and it's got to be an extension of your existing brand pillars. Or if it's a new brand pillar, you've got to own that as a new brand pillar. But don't just do it because you think everyone else is doing it. Because it's going to be so competitive, and it's still really confusing for a lot of customers, that whole thing. So translating the red thread from the brand's DNA into that is essential as well. And I think there's the last thing to point out is that in future, what I hope and see is that the girl who goes out now and spends £4.99 on a Shein gold disco dress that she wears once and tosses, right? You hope that the reason she's doing that is just for content. She's not really doing it necessarily for how she's experienced in the room on that party or whatever. It's more for her content because she wants her digital life to have that experience. So the idea is in future that they will then go and buy the skin, and that piece will never involve extraction of raw materials, virgin oil, slave labor, and then end up in landfill clogging up the planet, right? So in that respect, digital fashion could alleviate some of the footprint and the damage that fashion does to the planet by giving users the ability to express themselves through fashion in a digital manner, as long as those emissions are offset somehow responsibly. Here endeth the lesson.
I love that, and that's a perfect kind of lead into what I wanted Kadine to speak to, because there is this need for expression, right? There is this need for identity. There is a need for newness. That's the reality of it. And how does it all fuse together, right? Kadine, so I work at a SaaS platform called Smart Media Tech. We worked with you and your team at Artificial Rome on a diesel project, which Jen kindly brought to each of us. And I would love for you, Kadine, to walk us through the kind of play-by-play of how the project that we've done with Diesel goes from the physical item that you buy in store into a virtual experience where then you have an avatar and like, I mean, everyone's got to, not now, but after, go on Instagram, look at this project. The creative is just out of control, like next level creative. So you take the avatar into a photorealistic kind of dystopian future world. And then that avatar doesn't stop there. It morphs and changes through the journey of the experience. So like that's a big one. Legacy brand Diesel. Kadine, what's the play-by-play? Why is this landmark? And like what are the tips for success in taking a campaign like this and making it work in a legacy brand?
Wow, that is such a loaded question, and it's such a thrill to be on this panel with such amazing women. And I'm going to say that it takes an incredible team. I mean, we work with a pretty small team. Artificial Rome, we're a team of producers, art directors, creative technologists, developers and coders. We're using emerging technologies such as Unreal Engine, Epic Games technology to create virtual worlds and immersive experiences. And with the Diesel project, when we started chatting to Jen, it was very much about understanding how we could help the brand to connect with new and future audiences at scale, including their existing audience. So the Metamorph experience is now live. It's a global campaign that is in stores, in Diesel stores all over the world. It also includes a Web3 metaverse experience where there'll be a music performance from a well-known rap star. There's also MetaHumans technology that we've deployed. We've dressed the MetaHumans in Glenn Martins, who's the creative director at Diesel, in his latest collection. There's also a token experience that we've done with SMT and also with our friends at Public Pressure, which is unlocking brand new experiences for fans of the Diesel brand to get front row on the fashion show in Milan, but also to unlock this incredible watch that they can wear physically and also digitally. So it encompasses the real world in terms of the future of a retail experience, but it also lives on inside a hyper photorealistic AAA game environment with visuals that I would go as far as saying a Hollywood production, and I don't say that lightly. But thinking about legacy, I also wanted to touch on the opportunity that Diesel's tapping into. It's super savvy in terms of connecting with creators. It's also very much invested in the opportunity that new technology can bring in terms of using gaming platforms such as Unreal Engine, but also working with studios that have a really good understanding and insight in terms of how they can create these campaigns and experiences and bring them to life that resonate with their audience and that engage with fans at scale all over the world. We've also done a Ready Player Me activation, so you'll be able to wear the garments on your Ready Player Me avatar. You'll also be able to purchase the collection of the watches in stores all over the world. And I think this is one of the most inspiring projects that I've had the pleasure of working on with the brilliant Jen and also with your team, Noelle, at SMT. Prior to that at Yahoo, I was working, producing some very early legacy digital fashion experiences with the likes of Charlie Cohen and the Pokemon Company, which were kind of like very early test cases, and I think we've seen it evolve, particularly over the last couple of years, into this really incredible experience that we've produced for Metamorph and for Diesel and Fossil. And we're super excited about it. I think it's going to move the dial, and it certainly is something that will stand up and will be something that we'll look back in the digital fashion history books and we'll refer to. I'm pretty certain and confident of that. Jen, did you want to say anything else on that?
I think, from my perspective, I'm coming at it from the client side. So, excuse me, similar to the Hugo Boss perspective. And the most important thing about all of this technology, it's very sexy and it's fun, right? And it's expressive. But ultimately, if you can't figure out a way to use it so that the consumer and the brand actually benefit, it ends up coming across as just tech for tech's sake. And so with this particular project, when I was consulting for Fossil, the thing that we were really focused on was how can we make the watch an experience? And the watch itself is actually an analog watch. It doesn't have anything, not that it's not a special watch, the design, the aesthetic is very compelling, but it's not a smartwatch. So what can you do to connect the new world of Diesel? And Diesel, we're already quite active in Web3. They have a Discord, they have a community, they have periodic NFT drops. So we had something we could leverage, but we also wanted to take the physical environment and really understand how we could bring those two together. And fortunately, right around this time, Move AI, we're live with their second edition consumer-focused offering. So that really enabled us to leverage the watch and connect AI and Web3 together. And I know that's a big conversation right now because those two technologies are becoming more and more symbiotic. So for me, that was one of the bigger breakthroughs as to how we take a physical object and then connect that experience into Web3 through retail environments, which then connect into the metaverse.
And can you hear? Okay, hi. That's where I wanted to go next. Innovation for innovation's sake isn't sustainable. It's certainly not sustainable if you're in a down market, if inflation is high, and the cost of living is up. Everyone's going to be looking for efficiencies. So what I've found helpful in my conversations with enterprise brands is when we're talking about metrics that they can relate to, something that grounds the innovation so that they can start to see that there is a business outcome there, there's some sort of business model. Jen, when you were speaking with the Fossil team, constructing this, were you looking at any metrics that you could hope to derive from the activity? And if, yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think so for a traditional retailer, you have wholesale, e-commerce, and physical retail. And ultimately, the thing that matters most is how many units you shift. And the only way to shift units is by driving awareness and demand. So the way that the program or campaign has been architected, it really does extend beyond the tech, right? You have to support it with media above the line. You have to make sure you have enough budget. We signed a recording artist, which provides a lot of PR. And so with these activations, I guess firstly, you have to invest. Because if you're interested in shifting units, the tech itself is not going to shift the units for you, right? It's an activation, just like a physical pop-up at a music festival is an activation. So surprisingly, there were a lot of traditional metrics. I suppose on the more innovative end of the spectrum, we talked a lot about in-metaverse dwell time and other kind of leading indicators that would help us understand how sticky this experience is and how much does it matter to the consumer. And then within the avatar experience, there's a base avatar and there's an advanced avatar. If you buy the watch, you get the advanced avatar. If you're interested in engaging with the brand, you can start with the base avatar and then you can work your way through. So understanding the avatar usage as well was something of interest because the stickier the experience, the better Diesel fares in terms of attracting that consumer back to engage with the next drop or the next community event that they host.
I can tell that our other panelists want to jump in. Go ahead, Mary.
There's something I neglected to mention during the first question, which actually bakes into this one, which I think is really important in that if we're talking about sustainability and we're talking about general impact and purpose, given that we are in a crisis, the world is on fire, there's also, not just in terms of the avatars and the metaverses and the skins, there's another piece of digital innovation in legacy brands, and any brand that I think will be really come to bear in the next 5 years or so when the EU's regulation around digital product passports kicks in. Now, I don't know if has anyone here in this room ever scanned a QR code? I haven't, yeah, okay. So imagine if in future, whenever you buy a piece of clothing or an accessory or whatever it is, it comes with its own digital ID. That digital ID bakes into the brand's ecosystem, and therefore, whatever happens to that item, you should, as a consumer now, be able to get as much information about that product as you do from from food that you buy. If you buy food, you get the calories, the ingredients, the nutrition. You should be able to find out if it was Bangladeshi slave labor or it was, nuns working under the full moon who wove your cotton, right? And you can't, but you will have to very soon because of thanks to the EU, God bless them. But in future, you'll be connected to that brand in perpetuity, and where brands are going to not only be more purposeful and more responsible about staying connected to their customer after the point of sale, is they're going to be able to gather invaluable proprietary data back off the behavior around that item. So did it wash well? Did you repair it? Did you sell it on the secondary market? Did you trade it in? Does it have its own digital ID, which has got an NFT or a token attached to it? And what's the activity and the engagement around that item? Are you plugging it in on social? So there's a whole other way using digital product passports, which is what they're called, which means you can get better customer loyalty. Once the item, you don't want to wear it anymore, or it's worn out, you take it back. They've registered it, you've got the code, they give you a voucher for bringing it back, you can then buy something else. And that way, it's like Apple versus PC world, right? Like in Apple, you go back and you're always welcome in that brand's ecosystem. The same thing in fashion, and that is one of the most important things to do is if you're going to bake in this digital innovation into any brand, legacy or not, there has to, I think, be this acknowledgement of how you stay in touch with your customer to make sure that you avoid sending things to landfill, and you also can make better profit, like on... an item that if you take a commission on the repairs and the resale rather than just letting everybody else own that, you can, there's this case study we did for this white paper, we wrote about this for the British Fashion Council in the white paper, and a Ghani trench coat study we did, it would cost $500 to buy new, and Ghani could have made back £385 on the post-transaction life cycle. End of. So it's a revenue stream, consumer loyalty, it's not just about let's save the whales and the penguins, it's like let's also innovate our business model. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
And Nadia, you don't have to comment on this, but at Hugo, are you looking at passport identity for items and marketplace? And
We are. So that's why I was nodding
Yeah.
along with this, because
I'm sure you sat on a million meetings like this.
It's true, and I think for us that's, as a legacy brand and not a fast fashion brand, everything that you've just said, so I won't repeat, but equally because we are a brand actually where we own our factories, so if our product's made in Turkey, we own our factories, so the people that are producing our product actually are my colleagues, they're not another supplier, so that's another reason to engage and discover when you have this kind of information.
You bring it
and that's also a way of really communicating and interacting with our consumers in a way that's also valuable. So,
Right, because in that community internally, right? And then that's I think for the culture of your external or the customer community, that also probably matters a lot too, right?
Yeah, and I think that also contributes to the fact when we were talking about, okay, you're turning your consumers into fans,
Right.
and their fans are obsessive about knowing everything about everything and having the most and who did this and that, and I think having that is really critical, and then it's about everything we're doing around that turns those fans into powerful advocates for your brand, right? And that's the thing that gives you the sustainable growth or the emotional connection or the resonance, and it's everything to do with technology. It's a platform to service your consumer, because the brand is the brand, and legacy brand, we're 100, right? So it's like there's always going to be we hope we're always there with our brand, and the newness and the tech and the innovation is part of what we need to embrace to propagate our brand and to continue the legacy.
Right. And the storytelling. So storytelling
100%.
through this new medium.
Yeah, because if you think about it, technology moves on, the things we were looking at 10, 15 years ago that were the new thing, they're not the new thing now, and some of that stuff is just defunct. But the brands are still here.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how do you as a brand and a legacy brand driver find the ways to connect with consumers, find the reasons to leverage technology in a meaningful way that helps you to sustain your brand and your business in whichever positioning it is. For us, of course, that's an elevated luxury positioning. So,
And there's the, oh sorry, you guys
Like a
probably
tag
all,
team.
yeah, I know.
Like it.
We can actually do it. There's this thing called the behaviour attitude paradox, in particularly amongst Gen Y and Gen Z, right? They've grown up in the shadow of climate change. They've grown up as digital natives. They want the world to stop being on fire, but yet they still want to spend 6 hours a day in the metaverse. And how do you square that?
Yeah.
And that can kind of be squared by embedding this innovation, where as long as a brand doesn't think that the metaverse and skins and NFT departments over there, and then the digital product passport thing goes over the sustainability people, and those two won't. Like, if you can bring them together, you can then help surmount this behavior attitude paradox of consumers wanting to be purpose-driven and more mindful of the environment, but also wanting to consume fashion, being fans. You know, that's one way where you can.
And so maybe for the last 4 minutes that we have here, Kadine, Jen, the diesel metamorphosis, the whole experience from the offline, but particularly the online, that's an incredible storytelling moment. And Jen, you just spoke about how you can upsell a consumer. So you'll give them the opportunity to be part of the story, right? Their avatar, and that gets them in the story in a more immersive way than we've seen before. And then they have the opportunity, taking very much from the gaming world, to kind of up their level and have more experiences through what they're purchasing. So it'd be great to just hear future of storytelling in these environments. Jen, your perspective for 2 minutes. Kadine, yours for 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I think when you look at retail generally and you look at gaming, the two are converging, right? Part of that's because of collectibles. Part of that is driven by some of the metaverse environments that they're not traditional metaverses, but Roblox is considered a metaverse. So these spaces where Gen Z and Gen Alpha are spending time are the spaces that are going to influence people's purchase decision, right? It's a form of advertising. And so everybody's really gravitating toward that. So I think the future of storytelling is definitely partly in environments like that. And then if a brand can create their own community experience, so Diesel invested very early in that, as have many luxury brands. You know, your captive audience will be a certain size, but on a campaign by campaign or a season by season basis, and I still feel like some of this cadence is a bit more traditional because it's dictated by the fashion cycle, right? We haven't quite outgrown that in affordable luxury or luxury. I think fast fashion is very different. You find yourself in a position where you can tell these stories and you can animate faster, and I think a lot of the AI tools like Runway and Midjourney and things that we've probably all heard a lot during this conference are also enabling creative teams to weave product into these stories that can live in short form and long form and in immersive environments. So I think that's the future, and importing yourself into the environment is one way of engaging. Obviously, being a passive viewer is another way of engaging. And I think you'll just see a spectrum of how much or little people want to be part of that. It's still really early days, but if Roblox is any indication, I think the average Gen Z has something like 80 collectibles in their chest with their Robux currency that they use. So it's definitely, and then they're writing, my daughter is 6 and she wants to learn how to build an app by writing code, and she's in Roblox on her iPad. So that's sort of giving me a signal as to what's going to happen.
She's also your daughter, so.
Yeah,
Kadine, final viewpoint.
I echo everything that Jen says so eloquently, and I think the opportunity as well to kind of leverage the technology, including Midjourney. I know on the Metamorph experience, we have an incredible team of creatives that are all using these tools, and they're tools, right? As part of our, development stage and, kicking off the early kind of concepts. But I see the opportunity, I guess, for those tools to allow us to potentially experience fashion and art in ways that not so long ago would have been completely unimaginable, and it's opening unlocking, if you like, new opportunities for artists and creators to bring these concepts to life. I certainly think that tools such as Epic Games, Unreal Engine, and the next iteration of that is also going to unleash a next wave of creativity. And then going back to the opportunity that presents for legacy brands in terms of being able to have your content, your print campaign, your media, your hype, your sizzle, your token-gated interaction. You can come into the experience and metamorph and meet with a pop star who we filmed using motion capture and AI technology. He's going to be there live as part of this experience. Wow. Being able to come in and experience fashion, art, music, pop culture moments, I think is incredibly exciting. And I think going back to what the brilliant Nadia was saying around being able to build that legacy and continue for brands to be able to tell stories, supercharging their content and leveraging the opportunity that tech has isn't anything new. We're just going to keep adapting and picking up the tech, as we've done throughout the history of time. And the brands that want to be there in the next 100 years will need to be using these sorts of innovations in order to connect with their audiences. And going back to what Jen's saying about young people gathering in Roblox and having their digital identities and digital personas, and the wallet experience and interaction in and around that will become much more simplified. I've got many digital personas and digital avatars. I exist in many forms with different bodies in so many different worlds and spaces. And I think that will continue. I don't think we're going to press pause on innovation. And I think that the opportunity for brands to tell stories, through this narrative is a really rich one, and one that I'm really excited to be a part of.
Wonderful. I'm going to wrap up on that. Thank you so much to my panel. Can we have a round of applause?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.